Welcome, fans, to another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. Maurice is off tonight, but I am pleased to welcome a man to this show who was a staple on WCW syndicated programming for a number of years and has definitely made his mark and has definite opinions on the business, both in the classic sense and in the current dynamic. Mr. Butch Long. Butch, how are you tonight, sir?
Yo, I'm doing awesome, Jack. It's a pleasure to be on your Cheap Heat program, and I'm looking forward to some questions. I haven't really talked to anybody in a lot of years.
Yes, and that's part of, and you'll notice fans sometimes will be coming in and out here, but that's part of the StreamYard thing. We'll get them back when that happens. That is one of the areas of focus that we are doing in terms of the Cheap Heat podcast. We're looking at the individuals who made a mark in the business in that time frame, your time frame, that may not have had their stories told, and we're very pleased to have you on. So thank you once again.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and
You're back again. So
all right.
you were trained by Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey. Just like to give the fans some kind of background as to your experience in terms of what made you decide to get into the pro wrestling business and your training experience under the Gigolo.
It was really funny. I'm a 24-year-old male watching, on a Saturday morning, and I see a commercial that says, make $1,000 a week professional wrestling. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm not making that now. I think I should go down there and check this out. And when the tryouts came up, I took my old man down, and we're biker. I was like a biker dude. Like, I had no wrestling attributes or anything. I wasn't a great athlete by any means, as far as I could tell, but I thought I could do this deal. And the Monster Factory by Larry Sharp, he had the deal up in Baltimore. A lot of great stars came out of the Monster Factory. But in '91, he opened up the Monster Factory at the Sportatorium in Tampa, where a lot of great legends came out of. And I was fortunate enough in that time period to train there for a good 3 or 4 years before it shut down. So I got to see a lot of history in that building.
What we hear a lot of individuals from your era talk about, how different the training was as compared to today, the old school approach, if you will. What about your training stood out in terms of preparing you for the business? Was it the physically taxing experience that we've heard a lot of people talk about?
Well, it was a physically taxing experience. When school first started, we didn't even get in the ring. We were doing jumping jacks, push-ups. We were running stairs, just doing calisthenics for like an hour. And then you might get in and get to do a lockup or something for like the first week. And, they just kind of broke us in that we really needed this calisthenic training. And, they made us work really hard. Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey, he didn't cut any corners. It's like his belief was if you're in a tight area, small crowds, you keep it tight. You're not out there to hurt somebody, but it's tight, and you make the people believe what you're doing is real. And Jimmy taught us like that, and chops and punches and stuff like that. It was you grit your teeth and bear it. You come out of chest practice bloody sometimes when you're doing chops. So, he put us through our paces.
Would you agree that aspect of training is missing from today's practices largely? And again, I'm overgeneralizing in terms of the big companies, but did that not leave you with a respect for the business that many don't have today, or is that inaccurate?
I mean, maybe some people don't like to be hit, and for me, I embraced it. I mean, like I said, I wasn't an athlete, but when I got in the ring and I was, tested with these things, I actually enjoyed them, and the physicality of it, it gave me a little extra zip when I was in there. But a lot of people, as I encountered going up and down the ladder, some people don't like that type of physicality. They want to relate it to like WWF in the, say, the early 90s, when it was more circus, carnival style, where it was all show and no go. So, but you need a little bit of both.
Yeah, I agree. So you were first booked for WCW syndicated programming in approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, if my research is off on any of these, but around 1993. How did this first occur for you?
Well, again, Fidel Sierra, the Cuban assassin, he also worked in and out of the sportatorium where we were training. And at the time, WCW would come down and do vignettes at the sportatorium. Because, like, I remember before I even got invited up to do a TV, they came down to do a Sid Vicious and a Vader promo where it was this big Vader bomb. It was power bomb. It was a big power bomb promo where the Colonel was there with Vader, and they brought everybody, all the people that were in town, local workers. They brought us all to be, cast members in this video. And that might have been in '92, but they would do these things around town and invite us local wrestlers in. So that's kind of like our first in. I got my first Turner check probably for $75 in 1992.
You did a lot of work out of the famous, well, now famous, Center Stage in Atlanta and Disney Universal Studios. I remember watching those tapings as a kid. Never missed them. Never missed Saturday night. We've heard a lot about the atmosphere in both of those venues. Could you take a few minutes to let the fans know what that was like when you were actually working on those tapings?
Oh, well, Center Stage was great. It was kind of small. The backstage area, things were kind of sectioned off where the enhancement talent from the bigger talent, so to speak. And you might only hear from an agent right before you went on, maybe 2 or 3 minutes before you went on. There was a list, but sometimes, you just get, hey, get out there. You got 3 minutes. And, you'd be in there with the big boss man or Kevin Sullivan or somebody like that.
What about the Disney Universal Studios? We've heard a lot about the fact that the crowds, oh, he'll be right back. We heard a lot about the fact that the crowds in Universal Studios were largely tourists and they weren't wrestling fans. Did you notice a lack of response in the crowd, or
No. Those crowds, if you would go out and work the crowds like a worker should, you get the necessary reactions that you look for. But again, not every worker is out there to work the crowd. And the younger wrestlers that were sometimes doing those shows only. But it's more than just in-ring work. You have to go out there and connect with the fans, no matter whether you're putting somebody over or trying to get yourself over. It's still the interaction with the fans that, connect them to the match.
So one of the matches that you worked in '93, I believe, was against a young Dustin Rhodes. What was that experience like, given his family legacy? And did you find that the level of skill that he had from, a young age was made him stand out from the rest?
Oh, well, sure. Dustin was awesome. He was probably him or Terry Taylor was my first match. And both of them were easy as pie. Dustin made me feel great because, again, my experience level was, this is my first time up doing TV. So I'm super nervous. I'm jacked. I don't want to mess up. But here's Dustin. He's talking me through it. It's going to be easy, brother. And we just went out there and did it. And he's awesome. He's still awesome to this day. Much respect for Dustin and the whole family, really. I only got to be in the ring with Dusty one time. It was in a Nasty Boys match. And actually, Dusty was on the outside. And I had to take a bump outside it and feed in for the bionic elbow. So that was like my one experience with Dusty. I got to take the bionic elbow. So that was
yeah. It's quite an achievement that Dustin has been active as long as he has, and seemed to pick it up so quickly as a youngster. flipping to the other end of the spectrum, you worked a number of matches against Kevin Sullivan. You mentioned him earlier. He was recently brought into Great North Wrestling to manage the Blood Hunters, so he's still making appearances, still making the towns. What were your experiences like working with Kevin?
Oh boy, you never know what to expect with Kevin. I thought I was his whipping boy for a little while. He'd be throwing me down cement stairs at center stage and stuff, and you just take that kind of stuff. Hey, but I got him one time. He beat me into submission, and I got the win over him. Believe it or not.
When was that? How did that come about?
Oh, it was just one of the matches where he just didn't stop kicking the shit out of me in the corner, and I got the win.
Wow. Okay, you're back. In terms of your wrestling the Giant on WCW Saturday night, you did a number of handicap matches with him. Another guy who went on to have, such a Hall of Fame career. Were you hesitant working with a guy that green with that size, or was it, how did it turn out for you?
I mean, for me, it was fine. Again, he was I'd been in the ring with John Tenta and some other very large individuals, King Kong Bundy and whatnot. So I wasn't afraid, and I'd like to take high bumps. So if he was going to give me a choke slam, I was going to get up super high for him. So not much intimidation, because you know what you're doing. If you go out there and do what you're supposed to do, again, the job is to get the Giant over, and you know your role, and
just so moving into the Hogan era of WCW, you were there, you were working for the company at the time. Can you talk about Hogan's power backstage, or the impression? Sorry, it'll make it a two-part question. The word when he first came into the company, in terms of how it would impact WCW, if you have any input on that, and then what Hogan was like backstage. Did you have any encounters with him, that sort of thing?
I mean, for me, I never saw Hogan. Not one time I was there. So at Universal Studios, Disney Studios, never saw him. I couldn't tell you what was going on backstage, because for us, we were kind of sectioned off, and the agents would come and tell us what they needed from us, and we really didn't. Maybe in catering, you might have to see somebody, but there wasn't a whole lot of socialization with that. At least for me. I was kind of a private guy, so I wasn't out, trying to rub elbows with anybody. I probably should have been, but that wasn't me.
Did you get any sense when he joined the company of that it would be the historical event that it was, or again, were you just doing your job and that's that?
Well, no, as a fan, I was really surprised when he flipped over. It's like, oh, okay. All right, maybe they think he can, push the ratings. Hogan's a big. And WCW really needed something to jumpstart things. Things were kind of lagging through that early '90s period, where they were still finding their way. Turner wasn't really. It wasn't the wrestling company that it started out to be, like in the Crockett days in North Carolina, or even the Eddie Graham era down here in Florida. I mean, that's what it was born from, but then it went into this stale type of guys over. They were putting guys over and having their good matches with their top stars, but it seemed to be, it staled out a little bit.
Absolutely. Then in 95, you segued into shots with WWF syndicated programming. We're talking Adam Bomb. You mentioned King Kong Bundy, Men on a Mission, the Harris Brothers. How did these bookings come about? And was there a difference in terms of atmosphere in the WCW compared to the WCW locker room?
Well, there really wasn't that much. There really wasn't that much difference in the locker rooms, honestly. Again, in the WWF, you were again, off in your own little room, enhancement talent somewhere else. Top talent is, in their own secluded areas, and maybe you bump into somebody in catering. Again, different levels of talent got to go different places, of course. And, as not being social and not being a big mark for other wrestlers, I wasn't searching people out. In hindsight, I should have been, marketing myself and trying to, elevate myself through socializing. But, those things, you learn later in life.
Yes, sir. Do you have any? We'll wait till you're back. Do you have any highlights in terms of any of those opponents that I've mentioned or did not mention in terms of matches or how they were like to work with?
For TV, when I was super green, I think it was 93 or 94. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was in the WCW magazine where I was billed as this opponent for Ric Flair for like 2 weeks. The mystery opponent for they were getting ready to do Flair and Steamboat. I'm not sure which number it was, but Flair was the champion at the time. But I was billed as this guy. I come out there to meet Ric Flair. I think I got this shot. He comes out in his suit, styling and profiling. He gets in the ring. They ring the bell. One, headlock, hammerlock. Trip me, figure four. I'm there. I'm tapping. He doesn't give up. Steamboat comes in for the save, setting up their match at the pay-per-view. That was kind of like, oh, I'm so green, but oh my God, I am in the ring with Ric Flair and Steamboat. It's like, oh my God, it's like I can only, go up from here. That's what you're thinking, It's like, oh my, this is great. I'm just a couple years in the business, man. I'm on my way. Yeah, that was one of the most memorable moments.
Any from your WWF experience?
Well, WWF, there was Bobby Cook. He took me under his wing in this one tour, and he says, "Kid, we're going to go up here to WWF, and we're going to make a mark up here." And they put us in the ring with Techno Team 2000, Chad Fortune and Eric Watts, of course. And boy, I let Bob down. He's been so disappointed with me ever since. I just ruined his shot at WWF. Yeah, ask him, he'll tell you. It's like Butch Long, he ruined my shot at WWF. Holy distance.
Why was that?
Well, he was up there. He was looking to make the big show too. He was doing jobs, but everybody's looking for, get that next step up. You get in there with this other green team. If you really shine, they'll take another look at you. Well, I didn't let Mr. Cook shine. So I'm to blame for Mr. Cook not making any WWF. That's true.
Well, we'll have to ask Bob that when I interview him for the Great North Wrestling podcast on the Hannibal TV for sure. In 95, you had a match against the Renegade. What were your thoughts of that gimmick that was so controversial in terms of being the Ultimate Warrior Light, and how was your experience working with the guy?
Oh, again, he was, Ultimate Warrior Light. He was super green, and he did simple stuff, and we tried to keep it simple for him because you didn't want to confuse the fellow. Was it good heart, but he wasn't, he was green, and it showed.
Was it a difficult match for you? But more importantly, what did you think of the gimmick itself?
Again, I'm thinking, it's generic. It's an Ultimate Warrior Light. This isn't going to get over for anybody. He's just kind of spinning his wheels. But, they come up with these things and put them out there, and they hope the kid can get it over. But I don't think he had the personality or the charisma that they really needed him to have, basically, in my opinion.
Yeah, almost set up for failure.
Yes.
Richie Hodgkins, a fan, wants to know, what was Dusty like in person to come across?
Oh, you see the clips from NXT and stuff where he's coaching the Performance Center kids. He's just like that. He's just nice and, hey, brother, he's just like anybody else. It's amazing, as much as, he's meant to this business, and he is literally the common man. When you come up to him, he's just, hey, how you doing? So, yeah, much props. Love Dusty.
One of the nice guys. A fan on social media wanted me to ask you about, during your time in WWF, did you ever have any encounters with Vincent Kennedy McMahon?
No, not one time. Never saw him in the hallway. I seen his name on the door a couple times, but I never seen Vincent. No.
What agents did you deal with in WWF as opposed to WCW?
Well, in WWF it was Tony Garea, and you had what was the guy with the hair? Renegade, and then I think Sarge was there, and then in the back you had what's that older feller's name? Damn, there was an older feller that handled the money. He's super famous. I can't believe I can't remember his name right now.
Patterson?
No, not Patterson. Damn.
Strongbow?
No, he was there as well. But no, damn. No, never mind. I gotta let it go. Well, if I keep thinking about it, I'll never remember. And then who else is an agent? Of course, Jimmy Del Rey was one of our agents because he brought us up. And yeah, that was about it for WWF. And then in WCW, you would Terry Taylor would always, chat us up and tell us what we needed to do. And Arn Anderson was an agent too. And then you had Doug Dillinger would come and get you if they needed you for something special. But mostly, they put the list out, and then somebody would come and get you, or you would go find them.
What did you find? One or the other had the more organized, tighter locker room, or were they both about the same for you?
For me, they were both about the same. When you went to WCW, that you get there at 4:00 and the list is on the door most of the time, unless they're doing rewrites. And then at WWF, when you get to the house shows and the TVs, again, the stuff is on the door written, and then people come to you. You have a sign-up sheet, obviously, so they know you're there, and you just look for the paper.
In '96 in WCW on television, you and the late Gambler worked a tag match against the Road Warriors. Do you have any recollection of that particular match at that stage of their career when they were somewhat in flux?
Well, I mean, they were the same old Road Warriors. That was the first time I'd been in the ring with them. And Gambler decided to take everything. I didn't have to do a damn thing but get thrown out of the ring by them. And Gambler took the little flippy off the top. It was like 3 minutes. They just come in and bing, bang, boomed us, and boom, Gambler did his cards, and we were out. It was like the easiest match I had ever done almost, believe it or not. Now, the Steiner brothers, that's another story.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about the Steiners, one of my favorite tag teams growing up. So lay it on us, your story.
Oh man, they are awesome and everything, but boy, Rick threw me in for that clothesline. I swear to God, he hit me so hard right here, it drove my jaw into my ears, and it literally brought tears to my eyes as all I could do was reach out to get my tag, because I literally couldn't do anything after that. And Scott was great. My partner loved working with Scott. They did some nice suplexes and stuff because Bill could get super high. And Scott actually almost threw Bill out with a belly-to-belly suplex out of the ring because he got so high and kind of awkward with him. But we really enjoyed the match. But boys, Rick rocked my world that day.
Yeah, like Jim Ross has characterized him. It's like, would you say it's accurate, like working against 2 sacks of concrete?
Yeah. Sure, that would be accurate.
Richie Hutchins wants to know, did you know that when Bill Watts was president of WCW, he wanted to put Eric, his son, over and put the world title on him?
Well, I mean, everybody guessed that was happening. They really tried to push him hard, but it just fizzled and didn't work for him. And then Bill was gone, and so was Eric.
Kind of fizzled out, as you said. I had, Maurice and I on this podcast had your partner, Chris, on in terms of discussing the Chris Tipton, in terms of discussing your match with the Armstrongs that you had on WCW TV. And in addition to talking about how great a match that was and how competitive it was. The topic of the commentators not talking about what was happening in the ring at the time of a match came up, and that was a pet peeve for a lot of people. How do you feel about that when you're having a, like that match was against Brian and Brad,
I mean,
a competitive back and forth match, and they didn't talk about the action in the ring?
I mean, in hindsight, it is disappointing because there was a lot of action to cover. But again, as the worker, you might never even see the show. You might never even hear, what the commentators were saying. So you just go in there and you do it. That was such a fun match. Brad and Scott, they're awesome. They're like working nobody because they're so graceful. And oh my God, that match. Again, I was super green when we did that match. So it was definitely a learning experience, and it showed me, this is how it's done. And, keep it up.
Wait till you cut. There you are back. In terms of the use or lack of enhancement talent in the current major wrestling companies, what are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that we're missing an opportunity to provide guys with an opportunity, get others over, and then those that keep getting called back, like yourself, have an opportunity to move on and do other things in the business? Do you think that the business today is suffering from a lack of enhancement talents? And what are your thoughts on the enhancement talent being included in a Hall of Fame?
Oh man, a Hall of Fame would be like awesome, seeing as there are really no enhancement talents left. It'd be nice to be represented somewhere instead of getting lost in the history books as just, second fiddle guys who really didn't mean anything to anybody. When in fact, there was a lot of people that liked the enhancement talents and what they did to get other stars over. But really, there still are enhancement talents. They're just packaged in a different way. Like, again, you have the performance center and they have their greener guys. And when they're ready to put, one of their current stars over, they bring up their greenest guy or somebody that they think they can do the job. And, he's an enhancement talent for that day. And even up in the Fed or WWE, they still have their Dolph Zigglers and, people who have made it to the top that have worked their way back down. But now essentially they are enhancement talents as well because they have to get the current crop of superstars over. So now instead of having just enhancement talents, green guys coming up, working their way up the business, now you have more seasoned people who are trying to keep their jobs have to be the enhancement talent to further the business along. I mean, that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. A fan on social media submitted a question. Did you ever encounter a young Triple H, JeanPaul Levesque, terrorizing when you were in WCW? And do you have any recollections of your interactions with him?
No, I mean, I did several blue blood matches, so he was part of that, but no real interactions. He seemed like just back then, but he was, trying to do the royalty gimmick or whatever. Actually, he was terrorizing when I first met him. So when I did first see him, he was terrorizing, trying to get his first look. And he was just like the rest of us. We're all trying to get a look. But for him, he had it. He had the body. He was jacked, and he knew how to work. So, he had a foot in the door right there.
You, according to my research, wrestled until about 2019. Can you speak to the toll that length of a career takes on a person's body?
Oh yeah, I'm super beat up. I need a new knee, but I can't afford one. But I work through it. My shoulders are shot, my neck creaks and cracks, and my back hurts all the time for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I really loved wrestling. I got out of it after 10 years, but then I kind of pulled myself back in and just kind of spoon fed my way along instead of trying to go full bore. might not have been the right thing to do, but I had such a love for the business. I just wanted to be in the ring and perform. So, as long as I got to do that on a regular basis, I felt good. And like I said, if you work on your body, you stay keeping working out and active, things don't hurt as much, but it's taken its toll. I've had so many injuries, I can't count them, but, I endure. I still love wrestling. And yeah, just like 3 years ago, I had a match with a guy named Eddie Torres here in Florida, and it went well. I survived, and then I had a tag match with the Southern Posse guys just recently too. It was 3 years ago. Yeah, I'm officially done. I don't think I'll ever get back in the ring now.
That was going to be my next question. So as we wind down our time frame, could you offer what you would put, if you could delineate it, to your greatest memory or triumph in your career, the thing you're most proud of, and do you have any major regrets, Butch?
Well, the thing I'm most in my one trip to Japan, I got to work Masato Tanaka, Onita, and this other feller, Ichihiro, I think his name was, in a main event in Osaka Prefectural Gym. We did a 6-man street fight. It was totally crazy, but to be in the ring with Onita and Masato Tanaka, who was recently off of his EC.
There, you're back.
I think this was 1999. I went to Japan and worked for Onita, and going to Ribera Steakhouse over there, they treat you like a king, even if you're nobody. It's amazing. But that one match, and everybody made me feel like I belonged. This match went so well, and I was just in awe of it when it ended. And again, I'm thinking I made it. I did it. I just main evented in Japan. I'm going to take off from here. Didn't necessarily happen, but that was a really great experience for me.
Did you get the Ribera jacket?
Oh, absolutely. I got a red and black one. I still have it in my closet now. I wear it in the spring.
Nice. What would be the what would be your major regret if you could boil that down to?
I think my major regret was when I was probably 10 or 12 years in the business that I didn't actually go more full bore and take my body to the level that it needed to be. I had all the wrestling knowledge in the world that I needed to succeed at this, but I might not necessarily had the body that was going to take me to the top, or at that particular time, I didn't necessarily have my character down where it should have been, or at least where it was more presentable to the people in wrestling. So for me, I think I should have stayed in the gym a whole lot more and worked a whole lot more on character. And then I think it might have took me a little bit farther. But I have no regrets in the wrestling business. Like I said, I'm an uneducated individual, and I became a professional wrestler and traveled the world, and I got to meet every one of. Again, I wasn't a wrestling mark per se, but growing up, I did watch lots of wrestling on TV, so I was familiar with everybody. I love Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, the Long Riders from the AWA were one of my favorite tag teams. The WWF stuff from the early 80s, Bret Hart and all that. A big fan. I watched all professional wrestling, but I wasn't running out and, fanboying it. I was just from afar. All right, this is cool. I understand it. I like it. But when I got into it, it was, oh wow, this is totally different. And I got to be part of this brotherhood and family that I never thought that I would ever achieve. Coming from my upbringing, like I said, I wasn't athletically challenged. I saw a commercial on TV that said, "Hey, make $1,000 a week," and I said, I'm in. And Larry Sharp and the Monster Factory and Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey, sent me on my way. And I carved out a little bit of a niche. Like I said, I think I was a damn good enhancement talent. And here in Florida, I was super over in a tag team champion, among other things, everywhere I went here in Florida. So happy with my time. No regrets, other than maybe I could have worked harder, but we all could say that.
Well, and you were able to live your dream, and we're talking today, so the fans still remember you, especially those of a certain vintage that look back on that WCW period quite fondly. I think it's underrated in the historical retrospect. But Butch, where can you be found on social media if the fans wanted to get a hold of you? And do you have anything that you want to plug?
No, I really don't have anything I want to plug. My Butch Long Facebook page has been hijacked, so I don't do anything with that anymore. If people really want to talk to me, my real name is Howard Nally, and they can find me at Howard Nally at Facebook.com.
Well, sir, thank you very much. We definitely appreciate your time, and it has been an interesting discussion. We're going to continue here on the Cheap Heat Productions podcast to talk to individuals that have made their own unique mark to the wrestling business, but have stories that have not yet been told. Fans, take care, and we will see you.
It's been a pleasure
time.
talking to you, Jack, and it's been great to be on Cheap Heat. And anytime you give me a call, maybe I'll have a little more to offer.
Thank you, sir. We will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Jack. You take care, brother.
Take care. So that's it, fans. Another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. We will see you tomorrow, actually, if you're watching this live, for another edition of this podcast where we have the Black Nature Boy, Scoot Andrews, coming up. So you don't want to miss that one.